In this video, let's discuss at a high level some of the capabilities of the UA General Ledger. The UA General Ledger is sort of the heart and soul of the entire system and is a very powerful general ledger. What we'll do is we'll just take a high level overview so you kind of come to understand some of the basic capabilities, and there'll be other videos available for specific features within the general ledger. The journal processing subcomponent, create and maintain journals, allows you to either manually create journals for adjustments and those types of things, or to edit journals that come from subsystems. Whether you can edit a subsystem journal or not is definable, but again, this screen is where you'll manage journals, make changes, you can have journal templates, lots of good features there, but this is the screen where you'll maintain journals. You can create import journals. These will allow you to create a spreadsheet, sort of pass that around, so maybe you want to have your department heads enter their budgets into a spreadsheet and then kind of have those import back into the system. The create import journals would do that for you. Subsystem journals, what this does is it will reach out to the subsystems and create general ledger journals from that. When we use the term subsystem, what we're talking about is AR, AP, purchasing, those types of things. And the way the system works is you'll make transactions within those systems. Let's say you receive some cash in AR, and then a person with the general ledger credentials or right security permissions would then go in and create a journal from that. So the system basically, in this scenario, would pull that information in, obviously marking it as done so it doesn't happen again, but then it would pull that in into a journal screen for you. Again, whether that system, whether that journal can be edited or not is definable. Typically, you wouldn't want that to happen. If a person made a mistake in, let's say, in invoicing, you'd want them to create a credit memo and pull that in too, so there's a trail. But again, the system doesn't force you to operate that way, one way or the other. The edit list validate journals is once a journal is in the system, you'll run through a list of validations, and the system will produce an edit list in response to that. So you can create lots of different rules about how journals can work. One of those rules, for example, can be, can you post into a closed period? You could tell the system, I don't want that to happen. Once you've marked a period as closed, any journal that contains a date in that period should throw an exception. So this process would sort of scrub that. It would look at all the rules that you've defined. There's many hundreds of rules that are definable, and then say, hey, this journal is not valid for the following reasons. Period accruals is a very powerful feature that will allow you to create journals based on anticipated receipts or cash flows or invoicing. So for example, in a particular job, you may be invoicing the customer on the 15th of each month, but your GL periods end on the end of each typical Julian month. So let's say January 31st is when your financial period ends, but you're not going to be billing until the 15th of the next month. But 15 days has elapsed on a job, so you know that you've got 15 days worth of revenue coming from that customer that is going to be reflected in that period when the actual invoice goes out. So the system will accrue that 15 days worth of revenue, of course back it out on the next day, but the period accruals feature will do that for you and interact your GL with subsystem activity that isn't necessarily, that doesn't necessarily exist in an invoice or a voucher, for example. Once a journal has been validated, you can post those journals. So again, the goal is you create the journal either through a subsystem interface or manually. You validate the journal, then you will post that journal. One of the neat things you could do here is run a pre-validation, pre-impact. So I could say, if I post this, what's my balance sheet going to look like? What's my income statement going to look like? Sort of a soft post without actually committing it. The GL processing component, there's an allocations architecture where you can take the balance out of one account and move it into a series of other accounts based on percentages or dollar amounts. And again, that's how you would set up one of the features or functions you would use to set that up, and you would process that. You can close or reopen periods, tell the system that this period's closed. You can actually reopen periods and all that good stuff using this feature. You could also do the same for years. You can close or reopen years. Obviously, if you close a year, the end of the year entries are recommended by the system automatically for you. You could also run period accruals, which allows you to look at the period accruals over a certain time window. The allocation setup is done as a setup and maintenance. This is where you'll say this account morphs into these accounts based on dollar amounts, percentages, variances, those types of things. This is also where you'll set up your financial statements. There's an unlimited amount of financial statements you can create, and this is where you'll go in and create those and say that on this particular income statement, for example, I'd like to see these accounts. or this range of accounts, and create the different varieties of income statements, cash flow statements, etc. using these tools. The general ledger setup allows you, and I'll show you this really quickly. This is a screen where you can go in and set up the general ledger accounts, setting up a segmentation, defining the company structure, assembling it, defining your periods, set up processing options. Those types of things are all done with the GL Setup Wizard. Then you can maintain those accounts once they're created through the maintenance screen here. There's also drill down, so you can look at period balances into GL transactions. And then a where used function. So if you created an account, like, has this been used anywhere in the system? Perhaps the system won't let you delete it because it's being used somewhere. You can sort of do an analysis and say, hey, it was used over in materials management or purchasing, for example, and you can make some adjustings if you want to move that out. Lots of built-in reports. Again, this is only a subset. These are the ones I have rights to, but things like extended balance sheets, income statements, cash flow statements, pretty much anything you may want to define based on your segmentation. I want to see an income statement for this department or this division, full comparisons, budgeted comparisons, all those types of things. This standard trial balances. There's a report wizard that really allows you to create an unlimited amount of general ledger reports, cash flow statements, just anything you can conceive. The wizard can allow you to do that, and then that would appear here as a custom report you've created. But things like trial balances, working and activity, standard general ledger, general distributions, report definition analysis, different forms of income statements and balance sheets are done here. There's some utilities and analysis that allow you to set up templates, different types of charts that you may have. You can validate earnings entries, validate period balances, validate structures. There's graphing capabilities, those types of things. And there's also statistical processing. So, for example, you may have a number in your general ledger that you made $5,000 based on flooring sales, but you may want to also have a number that says, well, how many square foot of flooring made up that 5,000? So when you build your financial reports, you can have one column that shows you dollar amounts and the other column that shows you actual numerical statistical numbers that made up that number. You know, $5,000 meant 10,000 square foot of linoleum that we put down, or wood flooring that we put down. So you can really create these nice sophisticated reports where in one column you've got actuals, another column you've got the budgeted amount or the budget from last year, another column could have the variance between the two, and yet another column could have you know, how many square footage or how many yards or how many miles or units went into making up that number. So again, that just gives you a very high level overview of some of the capabilities of the UA General Ledger.